Alright, so in this video, I'm going to show how to use UIKit with our theme. So to start, I'm going to create a register view. It's going to be really similar to our sign-in view, just made with UIKit. So to start, I'll create a view controller. Okay. And I'm going to use a cool little trick that I have in another video, which I'll link. But it's a way for us to create SwiftUI previews for UIKit, view controllers, and views. So even if your app is using purely UIKit and no SwiftUI, you could still generate SwiftUI previews that don't ship with the app. So I'm going to use that to build out this UI. Which means I'm going to have to import SwiftUI. So in my other video, I show how you can conditionally import this and make sure it's only in debug. So you can do like if debug and then end if, so that this won't ship with your application. Okay, so in order to create our UI, I'm going to use storyboard. So I need to create a storyboard. And then set the class to that view controller we just created. And the storyboard ID will just match the class name. Okay, and then in order to load that, we could do view controller preview. Pass in the storyboard, the view controller ID, and then we have a function that lets us interact with the view that was created. So let's create this storyboard real quick. I'll even put it here. View controller ID is the same as the class name. And then this little closure will give us access to the view controller to set any properties we might want. Like if we want to dependency inject some properties or whatever, this is where we could do it. But for now, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to set the background color to orange just to make sure that this is loading. Which it is. So perfect. Now we have a little preview generating for us. We could even do like we did with the SwiftUI view and have the light mode as well as the dark mode. I think this was color scheme and dark. So now we'll have both light and dark in our previews. So in our view controller, we need pretty much similar to this view. We're going to have a title, some text fields, and a button at the bottom. So let's build that out in storyboard now. So do a label at the top. Make this 40 from the top and 20 on each side. And then center that text. Then we'll do our text fields. And I'm just going to throw them in a stack view to make things a little bit easier. We'll make that 40 from the label and also 20 on the sides. We really probably could embed this whole thing in another view so that we don't have to keep doing 20 for everything, but It's okay, we don't have to go that crazy right now. And then I think just a button at the bottom should do it for this simple screen. Boom. Okay, so now let's create some outlets for all of those. So if we start up our preview again, we'll see that rendering. So now we can get rid of this orange and create these outlets. So we have the title label, the 3 text fields, name field, then we'll do email and password, and then the button at the bottom. Now let's hook those up. Okay. So now all our outlets are good to go. And the way we're going to style them, I'm just going to create a private extension on our ViewController class. I'm going to create a function called refresh UI, and then 2 more. So 1 for colors and 1 for fonts. And then this refresh UI is just going to call both of those functions. So on load, we're going to refresh our UI, which is going to do all the styling that we need. So for now, we'll focus on just the top preview. So the way that we can detect changes to UIKit's environment is with a function called traitCollectionDidChange. So in SwiftUI, we could pull it from the environment and it'll re-render the view whenever that environment changes, but UIKit doesn't have that, so we have to use this function here. So we're going to call super just to propagate this to any super classes, and then check that with the view controller, there's a property called traitCollection that belongs to the specific view controller, and we're going to make sure that it's different from the previous traitCollection. So if it's the same, we just return and we don't do anything, and then if it's different, we're going to refresh the UI to update to whatever it needs to update to. So now, well, I guess we could start with colors. We'll just do the background color. So app theme dot adaptive color to background primary. Then to get dark mode, we're going to use that traitCollection property, and it is called user interface style, and we'll say that it is equal to dark. And then for high contrast, similarly, it's on traitCollection, but it's called accessibility contrast, and we'll make sure that it's high. Okay, so let's see if that is loading, which it is for both previews. Nice. So this would be a little bit annoying to have to do for every single color that we want. Ideally, we just would specify the style like we do with SwiftUI. We just specify the style and everything else is taken care of. So we could do that with UIKit as well, with a protocol and some extensions. So what we're going to do is create a protocol. We'll call it Themable View Controller. And it's going to have one property called theme of type theme provider. So we got to import the app theme. And then what we're going to do is extend this protocol where the class that is conforming to it is a UIViewController. So where self is UIViewController. And this is going to allow us to access the UIViewController properties within whatever functions we're adding to this protocol, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to take the two functions from our theme provider protocol and strip them down. So we'll add them in here. I'll start with color. So we only want to specify the style. So we could take what we've already used here, and then instead of using our singleton, we're going to use this property of the protocol. And then instead of specifying background primary, we're going to just pass the style along. And then we could do something similar with the font. So we'll take out these. I'll just put return in here. Then we're going to return the adaptive font, pass the style. Then in order to get the content size, we also access the traitCollection.preferred content size category. And for bold text, traitCollection.legibility weight is bold. Okay. So then we're going to have our view controller conform to this protocol. So that means we need to specify this theme property, which we'll just reference that singleton. And I like having it like this because then we could dependency inject themes into view controllers individually. And the other reason to use a protocol here is because it gives you flexibility. We don't have to make all our view controllers subclass, like some other view controller called like theme view controller. If we put these two functions on a subclass of view controller, then all of our view controllers have to subclass that, and that can create issues if you have a different super view controller. It gets messy with subclassing. So by using the protocol, it gives you flexibility and you don't have to worry about what the superclass is. So now that we've conformed to it, we can access it. So instead of this long code here, we just need, if I could spell background color, we just need to pass the style. So it'll be background primary. Then our preview shouldn't change. It should still look the same, and it does. So I'm going to delete out this. And let's move on to the title label. So we're going to do self.adaptive color, and then I think it's text secondary. We could check in here. So title text is using text secondary. Then the text fields have a background color that's background secondary. So we'll do that first. So name field dot background color equals background secondary. And then I'm going to do the same for the other fields. So email field and password field. Okay. And then in order to see, you know, the colors and stuff, we could use this config function. So actually, I'm going to add another function real quick just for setting up the UI initially. And this will set like the placeholders and stuff. So do name field. And similarly for the other ones, we'll do email and password. Okay, so now we see our placeholders showing up. And in order to see the, like if they actually type something, we could use our config function for that. So we could do vc.name. We have to type this. So we're going to say this is a register view controller type. And then we could access all of these properties. So we'll do name field, which in order to access that, we can make it these file private instead. You don't really need to make them private, or you could do even private set if you want. So you could do like private set, which means you can't set it from the outside, but you can still access the property and change things. So we'll do text equals some name. We might have to load the view first. So let's do load view if needed. And that's going to hook up all of our outlets. Otherwise, the outlets aren't connected, and when we try to access it, it'll crash. So load view if needed will connect your outlets if they're not. So now we can see the color of the text and make sure that when we're setting it in our code that it looks correct. Cool. So now let's set the text color for our fields. Which I think is text primary. And we'll put this in our dark preview as well. Nice. Okay. Set these for the other fields as well. Do email field and password field. Okay. And then the other thing we would change is the placeholder color itself. So let's do that. Which I think is a little bit easier in UIKit. So do name field dot attributed placeholder. Just gonna be an attributed string. So instead of setting the placeholder here, we're going to set it here. So it's going to be name. So the key is like foreground color, And then we're going to give it the adaptive color of text placeholder. And then we'll just pass these attributes here. And we can't see it because it has text, so we'll see if this works with the other ones. So email field is going to be email. And then password field will be password. Nice, so that is correct now. And then the last piece would be this button at the bottom. So we need the background color to be set to the action color. So action primary, which is perfect. And then we need to set the font color. So set the title color to the background, which is background primary for normal. Nice. And then we should make this bigger. So in storyboard, we can add a height constraint. Let's make this 50. Nice. And then we need to round those corners. So since that's not dynamically changing, I'm going to do it in the setup UI. So the setup UI is only going to get called once on viewDidLoad. And then refresh UI is going to get called on viewDidLoad as well as traitCollectionChanges. So anything that needs to be set once, I'm just going to put in this setup UI. So the register button .layer .corner radius, we'll make that 10. And that'll round to the corners. So nice. Now we need to do our fonts. So we'll start with the title label. Which is title. Boom. That loads. Now let's make sure that is actually correct. So we'll do title label dot text equals Spark code. And we could set the button here as well. So self dot register button set title. Make this capitalized, register for normal. Cool. So now we need to set our field fonts. So name field dot font. It's gonna be body. These are all gonna be body. So email field and password field. Nice. And then our button is, I think, it's like text link maybe? No, it's not that. It might be title. Let's see. What are our options? Oh, primary button. So that's probably it. Dot font. Oh, set title label dot font. Nice. So that button looks a little too small. And I realize this isn't going to grow because I set it to an absolute size. So I'm going to make it actually a minimum size and bump it up to like 60. So let's make this 60. And instead of equal, it'll be greater than or equal to 60. So that just means the smallest it could be is 60. So if we resume, that should be a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. Grew a little bit. So nice. That looks pretty good in both sizes. The only thing I honestly don't know how to do is setting the background color of the status bar and or the safe areas. I used to know how to do it, but I don't remember now since I've been using SwiftUI so much. So the only other thing maybe would be to make these fields a little bit taller. Since they're in a stack view, I don't know how that'll work. Let's see. We set a minimum height. So right now, the height is 34. Let's set them to 50. Drop this down to like 950 for the priority. And the reason being is just because I know like stack views are kind of weird. And I think when it first loads, everything is at 0 height and it'll give you a bunch of errors saying your constraints are broken. But if you lower the priority a little, you won't get those errors. So instead of equal, I'm going to say greater than or equal to 50 so that when our fonts get bigger, they'll grow with the font. So do the same thing with these other ones as well. Okay. So now our fields should look bigger when we refresh. Nice. So now all we got to do is run the app, and just see how things adjust. I mean, our previews, the colors are adjusting. So now when we run the app, we'll just change the font size and see that things are changing. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a SwiftUI wrapper. We'll call it register view, which is a UIViewController representable. Or maybe it's just called ViewController representable. ViewController. Oh, it's because SwiftUI is being imported here. Okay, so I'm going to move that up here. ViewController representable. There we go. So it's going to be make UIViewController and then update UIViewController. Then within here, we're just going to load it from storyboard. Okay. And then now when our app launches, we're going to load this register view. So where is that themed app? Okay, so if we run this now, we should be able to adjust our fonts. Everything is growing and shrinking as it should be. And if we bold, we see everything is bolding, which is perfect. The only thing is increasing contrast. We haven't done the contrast colors yet, so they're not loading correctly, but that's just because we haven't specified our contrast colors in our theme. So I guess in the next video I'll specify the contrast colors and wrap up this series. So look out for that.